Hello and welcome to the CBB Super Show. I'm your host, Walter Waddell, aka Dubdeuces85, the niche sports connoisseur, back with a better mic. We made it through the end of the show last night before we had any problems. Knock on wood. Let's see if we can do it again. I'm joined tonight once again by my man, Adam, Supreme Editor, FSWA Baseball Writer of the Year. If you are new to the show, welcome. What we do here is break down the college basketball DFS slate. It is an 11-gamer here on Wednesday. We're going to go game by game, the tried and true method of breaking these matchups down. We'll talk a little bit about some best bet stuff, some conference tournament previews, which we're going to start with, and perhaps a rehash of today, what we talked about last night, what worked, what didn't. Adam, how are you? Thanks for joining me again. I know it's late for you, but I really do appreciate you coming through and hanging out with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a little bit of a tough night for us. I think we done the slate well last night and then just didn't take our own advice. So I guess we're being punished a little bit today with not a cashing day, but hopefully we'll learn lessons and go through this slate, follow our own advice tomorrow, and bounce back.
Yeah, it's always frustrating, more so frustrating when if I just I play my guys and I just get dirt napped, like, okay, I can live with that. I didn't see the slate right or poor variance, whatever. But it's ultra frustrating when we went through, we read the slate pretty damn good, I'd say, but just didn't piece it together. Phylon, we both agreed, was like an amazing play at sub 9K. He was like 8% owned today. Nobody was on him. He puts up a 41 in his sleep. Obvious play. We were both on him. Somehow he doesn't end up in my lineup. I actually sent you a lineup last night after the show and be like, I feel pretty good about this one, and then ended up not using him at all anywhere. So that was a pretty frustrating one for me. UCF goes to overtime, but only chalk Thomas Folks ends up making value. I guess John Bull made value too, but nobody really had him. Riley Kugal, who was owned by like 12% of the field, had an amazing first 5 minutes. Kind of shat the bed after that. That was frustrating. Amari Allen was awful, second straight game. Freeman did well for us. Louisville stack was okay. Flory Badunga with a monster double-double. We were happy with that. We at least were smart enough to keep him in our lineups. I got a little bit lucky. Jaden Jones, value from Oklahoma, senior night. He didn't start, but I ended up playing him because I had to do something after that Amari Allen start, but it wasn't enough. Just 300 is winning the GPPs tonight. You got to have like 270 just to get any kind of profit. So it's all good. We just got to make sure after we spend this time breaking down the slate that we actually follow said advice, like you said. But overall, I think it was a good breakdown itself, and that's just going to prepare us further as we move forward here into conference tournaments. Speaking of which, let's talk some conference tournament stuff. Kicked off yesterday with Horizon League. Another Horizon League game today. Doug Gottlieb and the Green Bay boys advancing. That was solid. Now we're going to kick it off here. We've got 5 more conference previews we're going to talk about. Let me share my screen here and we'll pull up the bracket, and then we'll get into those. Let's see. All right, we're going to start with the NEC, which I really like this conference. They have a ton of teams that are new to the D1 level, and there's a bit of wrinkles or a bit of a wrinkle to this this tournament. Last year, or was it? It was 2 years ago 3 years ago. Sorry, 2023. Merrimack was not eligible yet in their conference tournament. They ended up winning, but the runner-up in that game, which I believe might have been Fairleigh Dickinson, they got to advance. We're in a similar situation here potentially because of the fact that Lemoyne and Mercyhurst and New Haven, who wasn't even eligible for the conference tournament, this is a weird one, are not eligible for the big dance because of their transitional status. Mercyhurst, I guess it's because Mercyhurst and Lemoyne are further along in the transition period. New Haven's, this is their first year, I believe. So they weren't even eligible for the conference tournament at all. And Stonehill just came off of the transition period, so they are eligible. And this is the last year that St. Francis is going to be a D1. Rather than not have football, which is obviously a lot of money if you do, they could have stayed D1 basketball, but they're so cheap at that school. And they do make money, I found out. They decided to go to the D3 level, not even the D2 level. They're going straight to D3. So St. Francis didn't qualify for the NEC tournament. They're out of it. Same with St. from a couple of years ago. So it's potentially some really wacky stuff happening here in the NEC. But I really like these teams, and I think teams like Lemoyne and Mercyhurst will maybe have an affinity for, because I made some decent money on them this year betting them. I think they have a chance to be really good in this conference for years to come. Now, the Dolphins of Lemoyne will be eligible next year, Mercyhurst in 2028, and then New Haven in 2029. So what basically, as you look at the bracket here, there's potential for Lemoyne to make the title game against Mercyhurst because they're the 3 and the 4 seed. If they do make the title game against each other, obviously they'll crown a tournament winner there. But they will play an additional bonus game, if you will, between the losers. So let's say Central Connecticut State and LIU, who are the 2 favorites in the tournament. Let's say they lose to said Lemoyne and Mercyhurst in the semis. They will then play a bonus game against each other, which will determine who actually gets the auto bid. All kinds of wackiness here. I'm here for it. I hope it happens. I love this Lemoyne team. Mercyhurst, I've got a Mercyhurst shirt that I've ordered from their library that is going to be here in hopefully a couple of days that I can wear. Really big fan of this conference. LIU is the odds-on favorite. I think most people that are going to be picking for any kind of conference tournament contests or just betting futures in general on these tournaments will be betting on LIU. They played extremely well this year, and they've looked like the real deal for sure. I'm pulling up the numbers on them. They're minus 150. You can see Vegas really believes in them too. Mercyhurst to win the tournament at plus 550 and Lemoyne at plus 650 offers pretty solid value too. And there's a little bit of a potential here for Stonehill to make a run at plus 5,000. I assume you picked LIU. We'll give it your take here in a second. But for me, I'm actually leaning towards Lemoyne. I think Lemoyne is going to end up winning this thing. I've seen Central Connecticut State play several times. They don't do it for me. I think Lemoyne's going to make a run this tournament. So that is who I am backing to win this tournament and cause chaos for the automatic bid. What are you thinking here?
I think we're pretty close, to be honest. I mean, I have the same thought process as you. I actually took Mercyhurst here. I'm not impressed. Not impressed by Central Connecticut State, just like you said. So I think Mercyhurst makes a run to the final. I think they're going to face LIU. And although LIU is probably the better team and the betting favorite to win, once LIU gets there against Mercyhurst, they know they're in. So they're not going to have that much motivation. I mean, sure, they could be playing for some pride. They probably want to win the tournament, but they know they're in no matter what. Whereas Mercyhurst has all motivation in the world to win the tournament and say, hey, we're coming. When we're eligible, we're going to come win this thing. We're going to make March Madness. We're going to make a run in the tournament. So they have all that motivation behind them. So I have Mercyhurst making the final against LIU. I think if LIU had to win that game, they would. But because they don't, I'm going to go Mercyhurst.
I love it. And early January, Mercyhurst pushed LIU on their court. Road game for them. They lost 60-58. Then just a week or two ago at home against LIU, they won 91-83. So it's a rubber match if they meet again. They had this kid, Bernie Blunt. He's 5'10", kind of the mighty de facto mighty mouse guard. He actually played at Quinnipiac a couple of years ago. You may have heard of him before with your knowledge of that conference in that area. Really good player. They have a solid roster. I like Mercyhurst's future. I think they're going to be really good. And like I said, I like Lemoyne too, so I'm excited to hear you say that. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos here. I'm probably going to put a bet on Mercyhurst and Lemoyne. It's good value there at 6.5 to 1 and 5.5 to 1. All right, let's move over here. Share this one to the Big South. This one is a pretty chalky one for me. We kicked things off USC Upstate and Gardner-Webb for the play-in for the right to play High Point. High Point, they should probably at this point be looking at moving them to a different conference. The Big South just, there's been some really good teams that have come out of the Big South and represented a tournament in the past. Remember a few years ago, UNC Asheville. They were pretty good from a DFS perspective, especially when we would get them on the slate. They had with a 27-win season a couple of years ago. Drew Pember, the former Tennessee transfer, Caleb Burgess, Nick McMullen. They had a really good roster there. They got their doors blown off by UCLA that year as a 15 seed, but they were a really good team. And I think that High Point is just so far and away the best option here in the Big South. It would be a true huge surprise for them not to come out. They have NIL that puts them on par with some low-level high majors, believe it or not. And they've kind of sleptwalk a bit here through some of their games. and have made them closer. Like, they weren't a very good team at covering. Like that, I want to put that out there right away. Like, they were horrible at covering a lot in conference play. And games that they just no business being close in, like against Radford 86-77, when they were like 18-point favorites, Presbyterian 20-point favorites. They win by 3. Like, I almost felt like they were kind of like the early 2000s Lakers that three-peated, like pacing themselves, right? And they're going to turn it on here. I think that they're easily going to win this year, barring something truly horrific goes sideways, like God forbid an injury or something like that. They're minus 250 to win this thing, so they're the biggest favorite of any. And yesterday, I think they were like minus, when I first saw it, like minus 200. So that's gone up. So people are actually betting that. Value on everyone else is good. Maybe a Presbyterian who has Jonah Pierce, one of the best big men in the conference. But this High Point team is just ridiculously good. Rob Martin, transfer from SEMO, Terry Anderson, who was a big shot maker for them last year. Back, has tournament experience as they made it. Owen Aquino, who played some at Liberty in the past. Scotty Washington, who played for Cal Baptist and CS Northridge. Braden Housen, who's been with the team for 2 years. He has that tournament experience. Just a really solid roster that I like. Yusuf Singare, who spent time with Connecticut, was actually on their title-winning team a couple of years ago. Conrad Martinez, former Arizona transfer, bench player there for them, but Cameron Fletcher, former Florida State player. Like, there's loaded at all positions. So High Point for me is kind of an easy pick, and I don't see any scenario in which they don't ship it here. They've on an 11-game winning streak and 27-4 by the time it's all said and done. They should be a 30-win team. What do you think?
Yeah, I like High Point here. It's just a smart move to make. I mean, if I was betting, I might take a stab at Winthrop, because I think Winthrop's the only team that could possibly beat them. But Winthrop even struggled a little bit with Radford, and they're going to have to get by them just to get to the final. So it's possible that Winthrop could even trip up against Radford and make things even easier for High Point. But I think High Point wins it. I'm going to go on the record saying High Point wins it. But if I was going to bet just value-wise, I'd at least sprinkle something on Winthrop. Winthrop's had some success in making the tournament in the past. I mean, they're a pretty solid team, but like you said, it's tough to keep up with High Point. And when all the chips are on the table here and they have to win, and it's at the end of conference play where they're kind of dragging their feet, they're probably going to win this thing.
Yeah, and like I said, the Big South, they've put some good teams in the tournament. Longwood a couple of years ago. Like, this conference does well with the transfer portal. Like, everybody says, it's a death sentence for low and mid majors, the transfer portal. But if you get P5 cast-offs like these schools do, you can actually turn yourself into a pretty good program. And a lot of these programs, Winthrop included, have done a really good job with that. I don't know if I'll sprinkle anything on Presbyterian, because I think that High Point will win, but betting wise, I'm going to be hitting Presbyterian a lot in these matchups, like against Radford. We'll see what the line is, but I'm going to be all over them. Presbyterian's one of the few teams in both of their games against High Point. They lost by 3 at home and 7 on the road. So they're one of the few teams that was able to push High Point. They have Jonah Pierce, one of the best big men in the conference. He's an absolute stud. So I do like Presbyterian here on a game-to-game basis, but we'll have some value there. All right, let's move over to the Summit. Number 1 seed in the Summit here is North Dakota State. Number 2 seed, St. Thomas, who I really like. North Dakota. You've got the South Dakota State group there, 7 seed. We're not used to seeing that from them. South Dakota, who's been a very good betting favorite in general, favorite and a dog. Won a decent amount of money on South Dakota this year. Really like them. Denver's done well. There's a lot of teams in the Summit. I really like the Summit Conference. I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. How about you lead us off here? Who are you liking in the Summit?
I like St. Thomas here. I think St. Thomas is a team that I've had a lot of success betting just in random nights, where I'm betting random teams, throw on ESPN Plus and watch some games. St. Thomas can score the ball. They are really, really good. And they also play some defense. I know they're really tough to beat at home. So the fact that this tournament will be on a neutral floor concerns me a little bit. They're almost unbeatable at home. But I do think that they're another one of those teams that was, I believe they were ineligible a couple of years ago to make the tournament. I don't know if they won the conference tournament and were just ineligible, but they kind of made that transition recently. And they've been building up towards this. I know they're the 2 seed. It's not going to be easy to get there. North Dakota State the 1 seed, also a very good team. But I just like the fact that they could score the ball with pretty much anybody. And they also play defense. They're not like a Marshall that can score but just can't play any defense. They're pretty well rounded. So I actually have St. Thomas upsetting North Dakota State. That was my final.
Yeah, I'm on St. Thomas here too. Like you had mentioned, this is their 5th year as a D1, I believe. So they're newly eligible here under Coach Johnny Tower. They have solid wins over North Dakota State. They've got a win against North Dakota. Their road loss to North Dakota State was just a 3-point loss. Some of the road losses they've had were by 2 and 4 points against the likes of Omaha and Denver, who are both, lower seeds, but they're both pretty competitive programs. Like the Summit League is actually a pretty good conference. I haven't looked at conference rankings in a while, but I feel like the Summit is a pretty solid group. Nolan Minisale is one of their best players, 17th best usage rate in the country. Elite passer, great defender, kind of a bigger point guard. They have a freshman, Nick Janikowski, Ben Oosterman, Austin Hero. Austin Hero is actually Tyler Hero's brother. And then they have Isaiah Johnson Aragu, who was a freshman for Miami, the Hurricanes last year, and he plays, rotational minutes here for St. Thomas. So they're another team here that's been able to hit the portal and play really well. In the early part of their non-con, they played St. Mary's, Army, Washington State, Green Bay, Portland, some pretty decent teams, Weber State. So that they've had a decent schedule, played some teams and well prepared. So I agree. I like the St. Thomas here to win it. Slight shout to South Dakota. Let me see here the odds. Summit, where are you? Okay. So interesting here. St. Thomas actually plus 135 on DK. North Dakota State plus 140. So the 2 seats slightly better odds here, but I do still like that. And then South Dakota, there's some value at plus 2,500. They're in a similar situation to Presbyterian for me. I'll be looking to maybe bet them depending on the lines for some individual tournament games. All right, let's get rid of that. We'll move over here to the ASUN. I was talking to you guys in the Discord before we went on the air. There's some not strange stuff happening, but the ASUN and the WAC are breaking up a little bit. The ASUN is going to be primarily next year Florida teams with a couple of North Carolina schools. It's 7 members overall. And then the WAC is going to be joining with Little Rock from the OVC, rebranding itself as the United Athletic Conference, which is the UAC. They'll have 9 members, and they're taking the like Texas schools from the ASUN, or the WAC, excuse me, and then non-Florida schools from the ASUN, Eastern Kentucky, Central Arkansas, North Bama, those type of teams into their own conference. So we'll have no more WAC, the UAC, and then a smaller ASUN. So some interesting stuff there. Overall, this is the one that can definitely have a lot of chaos. I think there are easily 2 or 3 teams that could walk away with the tournament here, and I wouldn't be that shocked. I think majority of people are kind of on Central Arkansas, and that was where my head was going to be at initially. I still really like Austin P. I think they're well coached. They have a great roster. They're plus 205 on DK currently. Central Arkansas plus 250. I do think it'll be one of those two. As of right now, my lean is Austin P, but it might change before I submit that officially in our contest, and then I'm in a couple of other things online. And I do want to throw a shout to Queens at plus 400. Queens is a team that has been a little bit up and down here recently, but they do have a pretty competitive roster. Their defense is horrible, which is the terrible part of it. But in February, they lost just 2 games, wins against East Kentucky, Lipscomb, North Florida, Jacksonville, beating teams that they should beat, Stetson. Then they had the close road loss to end the regular season against Central Arkansas, one of the best teams in the conference, 84-79, and then a close home loss to Austin P by 8. So they played both very, very competitively. I think this Queens team is a little bit surprising that they can't defend, which is going to be the main problem. But if they hit shots and, keep things close, get hot from 3, you never know what can happen in these tournament games. So I do think Queens is live to win it here. But as of right now, I'm probably on Austin P to get the auto bid. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean we're in line again. I have Austin P going. I like their head coach. I like the camo pants he wears. I like the toughness they bring. They're number one in defensive efficiency in the conference. I do like the Queens pick that you brought up, and I think on the opposite side of the bracket, obviously it's an even bigger long shot, but Queens and Bellarmine both just can absolutely score and play zero defense, and I mean like 0.00 defense. But, you know, it's one of those teams where it scares me a little bit. Central Arkansas, if they face Bellarmine in that quarterfinal and Central Arkansas can't hit their shots for whatever reason, that could be an interesting game. Same deal with Queens. If Queens gets to Austin P at the bottom of the bracket, which I believe they are, that's another one where if Austin P can't find the basket, you know, Queens can really score the ball. So those two teams are a little scary, but I do think Austin P and Central Arkansas are the two best teams. I just like the fact that Austin P just has a little bit of extra toughness. I just feel like they embody their coach a lot. And I'm going to take them with some conviction. I don't think I'm going to move off that. I know you said you might move off them before you make the pick official, but I'm writing it in stone right now, Austin P.
I like it. And then the Bellarmine shout, they're 365th in defensive efficiency per Ken Palm
Dead
out
last.
of 365 teams. But they're 73rd in offensive efficiency. So yeah, same thing. Like they won't defend at all, but they're actually 5th in effective field goal percentage, 19th in 3-point percentage, 7th in 2-point percentage, 7th in free throw percentage. So offensively, you know, they can get it done. They do have Brian Waddell, no relations to me, Walter Waddell, from Purdue. Spent, you know, 3 years as a backup big man there, never really worked out, but he's awesome for them. He's been absolutely dominant. And yeah, they can get hot. So it'll be interesting. This game against Jacksonville, I don't know what the total is. I'll look at it for tomorrow at the end, but the over, I want the over for sure. All right. And that takes us to our last one here, which is the OVC. Now this one, there's such an edge because they're a conference, and good on them, that rewards their top team. So the top two seeds there, Tennessee State and Morehead State, both get the byes into the semifinals for Friday. So, you know, you've got the first round taking place tomorrow. If Lindenwood, Eastern Illinois, SIUE, those type of teams are to make a run, they're going to have to play for 2 additional days there, which makes it very, very hard. But I'm going to zag a little bit here. I like UT Martin. They're the 4 seed, but they're much better than a 4 seed team would normally be in a conference like this. This UT Martin team, they're similar to Illinois in that they have a ton of, like, they hit the international rankings, and they've got a ton of players from overseas, and they just all gel together. And, you know, the European big type of shooters, and they're all 6'7", 6'8" type of wings. Like, they're a very good team. In the beginning of conference play, late December, early January, they were just running through everyone, you know, 76-68, 73-56, just barrel rolling all the teams. And then they hit a rough patch once they got to February. They lost at home to Morehead State, and that started a really kind of a downward spiral for them. Lost to Lindenwood on the road by 1. They shouldn't have lost. They lost in overtime to Southeast Missouri. They shouldn't have been losing that. And then they lost at home to end the season against Tennessee State, 67-42. Now, they have been injured a ton, and they're kind of the opposite of what the Bellarmines of the world. Defensively, they're top 100 in defensive efficiency, and a lot of their defensive metrics, 3-point defense, 2-point defense, are all very good, like top 25 in a lot of categories per Ken Palm. But when you look at their offense, it gets real ugly real fast. They're 319th in offensive efficiency, 292nd in effective field goal. They do turn it over at a high clip, which is concerning, although they do force a lot of turnovers. So their game is going to be to slow things down defensively, wreak havoc, and they have done that a lot in this conference, except for lately they've just been, you know, giving up some second half barrages from teams like Lindenwood and Tennessee State. But I am going to be leaning towards them. I think that they're finally healthy at the right time, and I just think that they have a run in them, in this team. They're very well. The chemistry is very high level for these guys. Pedro Santos, Filip Radakovic, who's now healthy, Filip Hetkovsky. There's just like a ton of guys who are all interchangeable pieces, but there's something to be said about the continuity there. That they've built and the chemistry that they have this year. So UT Martin is a dark horse pick there for me, coming out of the OVC. And the OVC tends to be pretty crazy. I know lately the top seeds have been coming out of it, but I think we see a little chaos here this year. What do you think?
Yeah, this one could be a little interesting because I'm going to the opposite side of the bracket with a little bit of a dark horse in SEMO, the 3 seed. I like SEMO, and it's possible we could get a final with SEMO against UT Martin, which would be very interesting, especially for our little competition. But the reason I like SEMO is I'm not really a believer in Morehead State, and I know they get the automatic trip to the semifinals, which is very valuable for these smaller conferences. But I think SEMO gets to that game. They're going to have a little bit momentum, and they're going to carry that momentum through Morehead State. And I like their pedigree too. I think, was it last year that they made the tournament or the year before? They've been there recently, but they're a little bit of a dark horse here. I think they slipped by Morehead State. And then who knows if UT Martin does get by Tennessee State, it's a 3 versus 4. I like their shot there, especially with UT Martin not being the best offensive team, like you said. But that's certainly one that we'll both be pulling for the 1 and 2 seeds to go down.
Yeah, for sure. And like I said, recently the top seeds have been making it the 1 seed in 2020, 2022, 2 seed in 21, 25, and then the 3 seed in 24. So there hasn't been a lot for the lower seeds there, but there's precedent in the early part of this conference for lower seeds. And I do think it's going to be a little chaotic. So yeah, I'm not super keen on Morehead State either. They weren't a great team to bet on this year. They didn't cover a lot, and especially late. And defensively, they're not particularly great. As you know, they just went on a major hot streak throughout February, whereas UT Martin fell apart there. Morehead State went hot. They only lost 1 game in February, which was to Southeast Missouri, SEMO there. But they own wins over Tennessee State, Tennessee Martin, Little Rock, all teams, capable in this conference tournament. So they're hot, but I think you're right. I'm not a true believer in them either. And I would say Tennessee State, who's 21-9, plays at a great pace and is fun to watch. I actually wouldn't mind them for DFS purposes. I'm not really scared about them either. So I like that SEMO call. I think the 3 or the 4 comes out. So I'm with you on that. All right, so that takes us through the conference tournaments there. I got my man Jeremy in the house, Tar Heels. We got Brett talking about Tar Heels undefeated at home. Let's get Caleb Wilson back. They're making a run. We talked about it last night. Hubert Davis, man. Oh, look at that. There's people talking about what's this Wisconsin, beanie that these guys got on with you. And they'll be happy to see the Tar Heels merchandise today. Good stuff.
Yeah, I got a little bit of dual representation going. So Wisconsin and North Carolina, as long as they don't play each other, we're cool. We root for both of them.
That'd be a tough one, yeah, for sure. All right, so we're going to delve into this 11-game slate. Starting off, we do start a little earlier again on this one. It'll be 3:30, so a half an hour earlier than usual. Minnesota versus Indiana. Indiana coming in as a 7.5-point favorite. Total of 138.5. Man, I got to tell you, Indiana has been horrific from a just watching them play. They're 17-12, which is, it's kind of funny because West Virginia there was a point there where West Virginia was going to have more wins than them. Bad loss for them today. With DeVries, Tucker, DeVries and Lamar Wilkerson have been great, but the roster for this Indiana team, with all the money they have, perhaps they spend it all on football, I guess. It just doesn't look very appealing, and I hate their games being on the slate. Minnesota, much more potent at home than they are on the road. They're down to their last 5 or 6 guys, as we know. This is just a very ugly game. And the Alabama game, we were worried about getting too early exposure too fast and wanting to have it later. This is a game where I can kind of go with that theory as well. I think it was a mistake to not have, obviously, Phylon and maybe a little bit of more exposure to the Georgia side today, being that Alabama games are so fantasy friendly. But this is a direct opposite of that environment with these teams. Tate Conaway just bit us the other day on a Hoosier slate when he was major chalk. This is just an awful game. I hate it. I wish it wasn't even on the slate. I'm not going to fully ignore it, but as of right now, I don't like it, and I'm hoping that you have something that you can bring to the table that may push us into rostering some folks from this game.
Yeah, I mean, it might be a little disappointed. I have a little bit of interest in Minnesota just because anytime I see a team that's essentially playing 6 players, really it's 5. I mean, they're pretty much just rolling out their starting 5 and just keeping them out there the whole game. I mean, that interests me alone just because, the more minutes you're out there, the more chances you have to score. You don't even have to be a good player. If you're just out there, you could luck box your way in the 20-plus fantasy points. So Minnesota interests me a little bit, but like you said, Not happy that it's on the road. Not happy that it's against Indiana. Those games are kind of ugly. So if I was going to take anybody, I'd probably look to the Minnesota side and look to the cheaper options, like maybe an Isaac Osama at 6'4", Grayson Grove at 5'8". I don't really think he's a good player, but he's almost playing 40 minutes at this point. So I'd have at least some moderate interest there. Indiana, the best player is obviously Lamar Wilkerson, but I don't want to pay $9K for somebody in this first game. I was willing to pay 8.8 for Phylon, like we talked about yesterday, but I don't think I'm going to pay $9K for Wilkinson. I'm not going to pay for DeVries. So it's really just Minnesota or bust for me, but it would have to be the cheaper options if I'm going to start off the slate with one of these teams.
Yeah, and Grove, I don't know that I can pay the 5.8 for him now. We were all over him against UCLA at 5.2 just because, yeah, there's going to be a lot of minutes. He played 38. He actually scored 0 points. This is the other thing that would if I had to roster someone from this game, it would probably be him. He scored 0 real points, but he still put up 26 fantasy points because of the 4 stocks, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. Like, if he could have scored 8 or 9 points, my God, he would have absolutely broken it. He hasn't shown himself, even with the short rotation, to have much of an affinity for scoring. And now that he's pushing that 6K number, it's a little bit tough for me to get there. I do think there's some GPP merit to Bobby Durkin, who had 34 against UCLA. Every time he gets written off, he has these huge shooting nights. He shot 7 of 11 from downtown against UCLA, 4 of 10 against Michigan, 4 of 7 against Rutgers. He's just red hot from 3 right now, and that's pretty much everything he does is coming back to his shooting. If he has a poor shooting night, it may turn ugly, especially at 7-3, which is why he's more of a GPP look. But lately he's been so efficient that he's worth considering. And he comes in as a forward rather than a guard. You don't normally see 3-point shooters like that at the forward spot. So I have some interest there in Durkin. But overall, it's a pass on most. Looking at the first run of projections, Asuma at almost 4x, Grayson Grove close to 4x, Durkin, Reynolds, Tyson, guys like that don't look particularly very good. And then on the Indiana side, the Conaway play, he just got rugged. Like, he played all those minutes the game before. I probably should have thought about that one more, as he's been hurt for so long this season. Clearly there was an issue there, and he didn't play much. So if we think Conaway is going to play 20 plus minutes, he's actually a slam. But how could we possibly trust that to happen? I guess he could go Cannon Catchings, like Catchings for Georgia did today, after playing like 8 minutes and breaking the slate. But I don't know, 4.3. He's very cheap, but I just don't want to start the day with a brick in my lineup. Maybe I roll an alt build just to have that exposure in case he does. And if I knew he would be like sub 10% owned, that would help me along a little bit, because normally chalk value I'm not afraid of, but that is one that if he was chalky, I'd be a little bit nervous about. I'm probably going to hit some Nick Dorn and Wilkerson under props for their rebounds too, by the way. Those have been pretty profitable. All right, we'll move on to the next game here, which is Texas versus Arkansas, a much more appealing fantasy matchup here. Total of 165.5. Arkansas comes in as a 6.5 point favorite. And yes, I definitely want all the exposure that I can get here. Arkansas has been fantastic. The prices are creeping up on all of their players, but just like last year, man, remember we would run those little 2- and 3-man Arkansas stacks, especially late in March last season. We're kind of back to that place again, outside of Nick Pringle, who, minutes just aren't there for him. Can't use him even though he's near mid price. Would love to. Carter Knox is out, and we're just seeing a Cuff, Brazil, Richmond, Malik Thomas, and now my man Malik Ewan play all the minutes they can handle. They're kind of like Minnesota in that regard, except they're actually good. So plenty of exposure here to this Arkansas side for me, I think. Why don't you kind of delve in first and tell us who you're looking at?
Yeah, this one almost reminds me a little bit of UCF, where I was kind of gun shy coming into this game because I knew UCF was more at full strength. So I actually avoided most of those guys. I don't think I played any of them. Ended up kind of being a mistake. I mean, the game went to overtime. Not everybody paid off, but there were some guys who really exploded. The game environment was what we thought it was. I just was kind of spooked by the fact that I liked it better when they were shorthanded. And that's somewhat similar to where Arkansas is right now. Arkansas was missing guys, and you could, and they were cheaper too. I mean, Malik Thomas was in the 6K range. I think Brazil's in the 8K range. Billy Richmond was like 5'6". Now Billy Richmond's 8'1". So like I'm finding it a little difficult to pay for some of these guys. I mean, Acuff is probably the same price he kind of was, but once again, I'm more of a balanced Betty type of lineup builder. So if I go with Acuff, it's gonna have to sacrifice elsewhere. I think Malik Ewan's probably the one who interests me the most because he's the one player who's starting to get those minutes, but his price is still reasonable at 5.2. So I think Ewan's somebody that I would be at least interested, but I'd be lying if I say I wasn't scared playing him because we've been burned by him in the past. We were burned by him a couple of weeks ago, but it does seem like he's kind of taken some of those extra minutes away from Pringle. Pringle's pretty much off the map right now. I think Ewan's a little bit more trustworthy, and he's probably the person I have most interest for Arkansas.
Yeah, and Ewan, he played the 19 to 20 minutes there for a time, and he just kept breaking out 10, 13, 15 fantasy points. And the projections really loved him against, it was the Missouri game. He played 32 minutes in that one, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to have to go down with the ship. I got to play him. He's super cheap at 4.9. Great matchup against Missouri Interior, and he ended up being like mid-teens ownership and put up a solid 27.5 fantasy points. He followed that up with 38.5 against Texas A&M in 34 minutes, and then Florida, which is a pretty tough matchup, and they did get their absolute doors blown off, 111 to 77. But he still put up 23 against that front court in Florida. So yeah, I'm really liking Malik Ewan. There is some concern here because there is a lot of size in that Texas front court. But Arkansas is at least at home. 5.2 is a cheap price for him, and he's a pretty good flagship piece, I think, in all formats. GPP-wise, I do like Malik Thomas. Buy low spot here at 7K. His price was nearly touching 9K there recently. 2 straight games under 25 fantasy points. This is kind of like the Amari Allen spot. He should bounce back here after a bad couple of games. Will he? That's another situation. Richmond, it's really, you're right. We're so used to paying 4 and 5K for him, but I've actually just been plugging him in. Now 8.1 is getting really up there. But I've pretty much just been plugging him in. If in my Ewan lineups are usually my main, and then I run a 1A off them. Richmond goes on the other side, and I've just been rostering both those guys pretty much every slate the last couple of weeks, and it's been working. I don't know if I want to stop rostering him. He does have guard forward eligibility. And I think his ownership will stay relatively low because people are going to be gun shy about paying that price for him, or they're just used to getting that economical price on him, or maybe even just paying down from Malik Thomas, or 100 more going to Trevon Brazil, who people may be trusting a little bit more. He was awful against Florida. He gets a pass there. But Brazil doesn't have the same level of upside Richmond has kind of shown, to me at least. We know Brazil has that upside. But he's just deferring a lot on offense. Brazil has to get there through stocks, rebounds, peripherals. We're seeing a lot of offensive, weaponry coming from Malik Thomas, Richmond, and Acuff. 9.9 is a very heavy price for him. I probably wouldn't pay that for him either. I do like Acuff because he's so safe. He's kind of like the Tyler Tanner in that regard, who went nuts today. Of course, it wasn't on the slate. But I'm definitely, taking a page out of your book there and saying like, yeah, we're going to get 35 to maybe even 40 out of him. Will it be enough on this slate? I don't know that this slate is going to be 300 plus like it was tonight, although we'll see. So yeah, I'm more so paying down. I think Ewan and Richmond are both kind of main team viable for me here. Texas side, you've got a 9.5K Dallin Swain. He's matchup proof at this time. He's been so good for Texas. It was great for Xavier last year. Same kind of thing, though. His price has risen so high. He feels to me like the Keyshawn Hall, which I played all the time last year, not so much this year. Like, you just know you're going to get 35 from him pretty much no matter what. And there'll be occasional spikes where he hits 45, 50. Like, it does happen. But you can pretty much just kind of pencil in that 35 and know, like, okay, here's what I'm getting. When he was priced at 8.5 and 8.4 and some of the cheaper early season prices, like that's just an auto lock and load. But when we're talking about 9.5, it's a little bit tougher to get to, and he never gets rostered. So he is another guy that really just gets ignored by the masses because of that price point. We've seen some Tremont Mark, Jordan Pope, offensive explosions here recently. But I do really like Swain. I think this game kind of looks like a decent GPP stack. They're all expensive, of course, but I think you can make it work, especially if we can unearth some value here in the later games as we go. The projections usually like Mattis Vakiadititis, who is the FAU transfer. 30-plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3. His minutes are just, like, he's such a high-level fantasy point per minute guy. Like, he put up 31 back in December in like 21 minutes. Then he put up 27 against Texas A&M in 23 minutes. He's really good at that level. And if he ever goes over 30 minutes like he should in this competitive game, he really could be a slate breaker and another one of those guys that's relatively safe. But I haven't found myself rostering him quite as much, especially at this prices of 7 and 8K. And then as far as the Texas values go, I don't know that Texas is going to make like a deep tournament run, so we probably won't have to worry about it with this team. You know, in the past when we were having small slates or would get into the tournament, it'd be like, okay, Simeon Wilcher at 3.7. I can, maybe get 12 from him at that price. Kendall Weaver 4-1. Like we know he can spike and hit a 20. Like it's just really difficult to feel good about any of those Texas values. Camden Heidi's had some big games, but he's back to putting up 1 to 2 fantasy points per game again. Like I just can't get down with any of these Texas values. And at this point, I'm not chasing any Tremont Mark games. You can see in a week's time, he put up a 35, an 18, and a 4. I just want no part of that. So no Texas really for me in the main. But Ewan and Richmond are definitely in my scopes here for all formats. All right, we'll move on to this next game here, Miami, Florida versus SMU. Before we do that, Jeremy says, shout out, won me a couple $100 on the Zuby Badunga rebounding props. Yeah, over 9.5 on Flory Badunga. He's such a stud. Love him, man. Out in Kansas, I feel like Kansas and BYU are just like dead on arrival for the tournament, but Badunga's still out there doing his thing. Gotta love that. One thing you can say about Bill Self, he develops big men really, really well. All right, SMU at Miami. SMU 1.5 point favorites. I do got to tell you right now, I like Miami side, Miami money line. I think they're going to beat SMU here. SMU's banged up, and I just think Miami is a better team. Total of 160.5. I also like the over. I just think this is going to be a game where we see both teams, kind of pushing into the 45-50 range by halftime and maybe even touching 100 individual points for one of these teams, maybe more. So I do like the over quite a bit here. Injuries, BJ Edwards is still, let me just double check. He will. So the ankle injury will keep him out. That's a big loss for them as he's the main facilitator. It pushes the ball into Boopy Miller's hands more, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it does make him more inefficient. When Miller has BJ Edwards to operate as a facilitator, he gets him a lot of easy shots. And those are just going to be gone. We did see Boopy, his usage rate was extremely high without Edwards last game. He put up 36.5 against Stanford, 26 points, 5 assists. It was a strong game for him. Priced at 8.4, certainly relevant and viable there. Jaron Pierre has put up 30-plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4. He's there at 7.3. But we saw the starter who came in and got the start there. They went with a bigger lineup against Stanford. Stanford had some size, was my man Jaden Toombs, who I really think he has a bright future. He'll probably will portal after this year. We'll see where he ends up. He's going to be really, really good. Like if he went to Kansas and was the Badunga replacement, like you'd be talking about this guy as an absolute stud. Ended up getting into major foul trouble, played just 19 minutes. It felt like such a strong outplay of the field because he got the start and people didn't react to it, but obviously it ended up being a mistake. Results wise, I still think it was a good process. And if he were to start again, I think at this 4.3 price tag, I'd be interested in him again. I think he's that good. Jermaine O'Neal, solid younger player. But he's just super raw. And they tried to give him minutes. He played 23 in the game against Stanford, but he's just not a threat. He shooting wise, he's not taking shots without Edwards to facilitate. He's not creating his own shots. So I do think we might see Toombs start again. And Miami has a sizable front court, so it makes a lot of sense. And people are going to look at that last game and say, hell no, I want no part of that. But Toombs could very easily hit 20 plus in this spot. He just has to stay out of foul trouble. And for that token, I do think Sumit Unica-Lewis is also in play at 6K. He's not been as dominant this year, especially in conference play, as we saw from him last year in spurts. But that price of 6K certainly can't argue it. Corey Washington at 5.8, I think I'd have to pass on that. He's been really good. Sumet's been kind of ordinary, and that's why those prices have dropped on Sumet and moved up on Washington. He's also a pretty high fouler, so I would be careful there. And then the Miami side, I have had tremendous, I don't want to say luck, but experiences with Malik Renew. He has absolutely dominated games. Now he's been banged up in his shooting hand, especially, and that's been a problem. They blew out Boston College here recently. He played only 22 minutes in that game, so they got him some rest, and that's caused his price to drop. Fresh off a 40 game against Florida State before that when they won by 10. We're getting Malik at 7.9K, and I can just about guarantee the model is going to love him. Let me just look real quick. Yeah, at 30 minutes, pushing nearly 4.5x. Absolutely love him. Lock and load for me. I don't care that it's on the road. SMU defensively, they bleed fantasy points to multiple positions. Renew in competitive games, he's playing mid-30s minutes. And Miami doesn't really have much of a bench. And I gotta say, Miami from head coach to scouts, I've actually been pretty impressed with this staff. And I really like the way that Jai Lucas runs his rotations and trust his guys. When they do pick up 2 fouls outside of Ernest Uday for obvious reasons, he lets them play. That 2 foul participation is important, as you know, because nothing worse than getting 2 fouls in 5 minutes and losing an entire half for your guy. But we don't have to worry about that too much with Renew, Henderson, guys like that. So I'm pretty close to all in on Renew, and I will not be this time tomorrow saying, well, I liked them yesterday, but I didn't use them. There's no chance of that happening. All the way in on him. Like Shelton Henderson at 7K as well, but only 900 more for Renew, who should be 9K. Yeah. Give me all of it. Trey Donaldson is more expensive than Malik Renew at this point. Donaldson's been great, but I'm not paying more than him for Renew. Like, give me a break. Uday at 7.4. He's been good, but we know the problems that can happen with him. Him and Samet are probably just going to end up being physical with each other, and I just don't want any part of that really at that price. And then there is some viability for me on True Washington. Unfortunately, he's been so good the last 2 games, it's pushed his price back up towards 6K. We were getting close to the 5K range on him coming back from injury, so he might be a touch out of play there. He has been splitting minutes with the youngster Dante Allen, who's priced at 4.7. But overall, this game definitely has major stack vibes, but Malik Renew is an all-in play for me, and if Jaden Toombs starts, I'll probably end up playing him because 4.3. I'm a glutton for punishment, and if I fade him like I did Catchings after a bad game and he goes off, I'll just be absolutely breaking things. So I can't have that happen. So Renew and Toombs for me here. What do you think? What do you like in this one?
Yeah, you broke it down well. I mean, Renew was the guy that I had circled too. I'm glad to hear that you're on him because you're pretty much the Malik Renew whisperer here. When you're on him, he does well. When you're off him, that's usually the game he's either hurt, has an illness, gets some foul trouble. So Renew was the guy I had circled for Miami. And then Boopy Miller and Pierre. I just like the fact that they're probably just going to eat up so much usage. Pierre's probably going to take like 17 to 20 shots. Boopy Miller, we had him as chalk a couple slates ago and he kind of busted, but this is a chance to maybe tone for that. So those are the 3. And then 2 you might talk me into just because of the value. And we've talked about this in the Discord so many times. We play a guy busts and then we hop off him the next game. That's when they just detonate. So I could totally see this being the Toombs game. And if you don't roster him and he has 20, 25 fantasy points, you're going to be kicking yourself. So he's somebody I'll at least add to my player pool here. But for now, it's Renew almost as a lock. And then I don't know if I'll play both. I'll probably lean Pierre between the 2, but it's very possible if you just want to go all in on this game, you could play Boopy, Pierre, Toombs, and Renew. 4 of them. It's possible. I'm not saying I'm going to do it, but if you want a full game stack, it's on the table.
Yeah, and I'll dig into it more later tonight, early morning, but with totals and stuff. But I think that this one could be like a 190, 200 total. I honestly do. We'll see if that actually happens. And the early run, Miller at like 36 minutes, slate breaker, 40 plus points. Pierre at 37 minutes, 34 plus points. I mean, there's just a lot to like in this game. And it seems so obvious. I just don't want to tomorrow before a lock just end up getting away from this game because it just is going to be a big mistake, I think. So I'm going to be living and dying on this game a lot, I think, when it's all said and done. All right, we'll move on to Marquette Providence in the Big East. Providence 4.5 point favorite, total of 161.5. Why don't you start us off on this one?
Well, this one has a little bit of injury news, I believe, unless there's been some updates. I think we're going to have to see what's going on with Vox and what's going on with Floyd, because if both of those guys were out, then that would probably bring one of our favorites, Ryan Mila, into play. It would also probably make Jason Edwards more attractive. Jalen Sellers could be like the Providence version of Boopy Miller if some of the other guards are out. So it's certainly something we'll probably have to monitor. I think when I looked last, they were both questionable. I don't know if there's been any update on that. It doesn't look like it. I think Vox was an illness, so he could come back. But that's one we're just going to have to, monitor throughout the day. There are players who I would be interested in depending on that. And then on the Marquette side, I mean, Nigel James is really expensive. He's had some big games, but 10K is a big price to pay. I mean, I'd probably rather just play a cuff at 9.9 if I was going to consider James at 10K. The rest of the Marquette guys are just too expensive for me. Marquette kind of really screwed us a little bit over the weekend. I think it was Sunday. A lot of us were stacking that Marquette and DePaul game. It was pretty much a dud, but those guys are a little too expensive for me. So I'll probably be waiting around to see some of the news on Providence, and if some of those guys are out, then I'll probably be looking to like a Ryan Mila or a Jason Edwards, but we'll monitor it.
Yeah, Mila, it's crazy because they need guys out for him to get like these bulk minutes, and when he does get them, he's damn productive. Like he played 36 minutes, and it was an integral part of them beating Creighton, which was a pretty surprise win, I thought. These two teams, when they last played, I remember this game well because I had actually bet the Marquette side and ended up losing. They won the game, but they didn't cover. It was 105-104 in overtime, and it was a big-time performance. Jalen Sellers had 27 points, 5 assists. Stephen Bax had 26 points. Oswin Nursuman had 15 rebounds. Jameer Jones had 17 and 9, like some really big performances. Jason Edwards was out for this game, but had he played, I'm sure he would have put up a big game. This was Nigel James' like breakout game, actually. 38 points, 8 assists, 2 steals, 3 rebounds. Hit 4 of 6 from long range. Like just a masterful performance from him. Chase Ross was really good, 24, 4 and 6. Adrian Stevens had 7, 4 and 4 with 3 steals. He was solid at that time. He was like 4K. It was a really big game. One thing with Providence, defensively, they're pretty suspect out of all the Big East teams, and they've given up some pretty big games. And they tend to be a pretty fantasy friendly team, especially with Edwards back in the mix now. It does complicate matters if Vox plays because between Jones, Vox, Edwards, and Sellers, there's not a lot of shots for other guys. And then if Floyd's in the mix, he's taking the remaining shots. So it does complicate things. I am curious to see if the industry jumps off of Marquette after that. Like that game against DePaul, man, set basketball back many years. It was awful to watch. They're pretty expensive, like you said. Royce Parham, even Stevens, if he's over 5K, I kind of feel we paid it for the 5-7 on Sunday because there's less options or whatever. But on a full slate, I don't even know if I can get there with him. And he has shown some upside, especially at this price point, but I'm just a little bit leery on him. Although I do think if he plays 30 plus minutes, he probably pays off. He is a bit of a fouler, especially on the road, and that is a concern for me, as he did foul out in the Providence game last time they played. So yeah, we'll wait to see what the news shakes. I do feel like this might be a spot for Jason Edwards. He's priced at 6.5, so he's kind of like in between. He's just like, he's not quite overpriced. He's not quite underpriced, probably where he should be right now, considering the injuries that we have and what we're waiting for. But if Vax ends up out, I almost think he becomes an auto play at this 6.5 price point, because what I expect from him is 15 plus shots, maybe even 20 plus in a spot against Marquette, in which he could absolutely detonate. I don't know if this is Providence senior night. I had a senior night list going, but I haven't been updating it. Let me look real quick, because that also will matter a little bit. Looks like it might be the Creighton's. The last game was Creighton's celebrated senior night against Palisades. Okay, yeah, looks like they may be having their senior night this week, so we'll see. Anyways, we'll move on to the next Big East game here: Villanova versus DePaul. Total of 135.5. Nova is a 3.5 point favorite. We haven't had much Villanova on the slate this last, it almost feels like this last month. You're pretty busy with football stuff and obviously baseball, so you don't usually join up with us until like 2 months in the season, and Villanova was on the slate like the first couple that you were a part of. And this is a team that you really like to tilt. Maybe not like, but you do tilt this team quite a bit. Super cheap at the guard spots, guys like Devin Askew, Bryce Lindsey. But man, it is so hard. Bryce Lindsey's been like monstered entirely. I know last time I said that about someone, they ended up having like a 40. He's been really awful. His price continues to be cheap, but he just doesn't produce, and nobody rosters him at this point. Like for a while, we all kept rostering him at 4 or 5Ks because like this guy's going to break out of his slump. It just hasn't happened. He did put up 23.5 recently against Butler, but for the most part, 6, 5, 11, 13, 10.5. Like there's some pretty ugly performances here from Lindsey. And Askew, he's kind of instant offense off the bench. I'm actually a little bit confused about why he's only 4.7. He has back-to-back games of 22 and 27 fantasy points. Now, the UConn game, which he gets a reprieve for in 20 minutes, he had like 0.5 fantasy points, but Connecticut defense, different animal. This matchup against DePaul, they're not Connecticut. I think we might see a big-time Devin Askew game. It's going to have to probably come in the first half. This is what I've noticed about him. He comes in, in that first shift of his, usually like, 5 minutes in the game, and he's taking every shot he possibly can get. And he gets hot, he gets some steals. Suddenly you're like, damn, this guy's got 15, fantasy points in the blink of an eye. And then it's a struggle to get to that 20, 25 for the rest of it. So he's just high enough at 4.7 where he could potentially do a lot of damage if he throws up a 5. But looking at this matchup and some of the DePaul injuries that they've got, I think he could actually play quite well. In their first meeting against DePaul was back in December. It was actually New Year's Eve. He only had 13 fantasy points in that one, but he did play 25 minutes. And if you told me he's going to play 25 plus here against DePaul, I'd be pretty damn interested. He only took 2 shots in that game, which is a bit of an anomaly. Anytime he plays 25 plus minutes, he's probably taking 10 plus shots. And especially lately, like the game against St. John's, he took 10 shots against them in 28 minutes. Against Butler, he took 7 in 22 minutes. Against Creighton, 11 shots in 26 minutes. So I have some interest in Askew here. I don't know, where he fits into my main build here, but we've got some definitive value at our fingertips. And I think I'm more interested in him than I would be Lindsey. As far as anybody else, Tyler Perkins' price is way too expensive now at 7.5. He was the one we were used to just clicking in, at 4.7, 4.5, 5K. Again, it doesn't seem like they've been on the slate very much for the last month of the season, and looking through the logs, that's really been the case. Paying almost 8K for him it's a no-fly zone for me. And Caden Lewis, the youngster who I really like and hope he comes back for another year, probably not able to pay 7.2 for him either. Looking at the DePaul game, it was early in the season for him. He only put up 18. I don't know that he has enough upside really to be paying off a 7.2 price point. Duke Brennan is, I don't want to say he's your guy, but you did tend to roster him quite a bit. His rebounding props are always interesting because the model always projects him for 12 plus rebounds, which he has done plenty of times. But man, 8.5 for him seems like a really tough price as well. On the DePaul side, they're finally starting to get healthy. CJ Gunn, Layden Blocker, and what's happened now is they're all just cannibalizing each other. But also we've seen Brandon Macklin, of all people, emerge from the guards and wings as kind of the alpha on this roster. And I don't think coming into the season anybody would have thought that. Like Gunn returning Blocker, they got RJ Smith from Colorado. Those are the guys I thought would be, kind of the de facto co-alphas. And Macklin's really been that guy. We've also seen big man NJ Benson playing the best basketball of his life. 5 straight games scoring 30 or more fantasy points, which has made his price balloon up to nearly 8K here as well. Not sure how he's going to fare against Duke Brennan in the Villanova front court. He only had 15.5 fantasy points in their prior meeting, so I would probably pump the brakes just a tad there. But this is an interesting game where I think if you fully fade it, you'll be kind of maybe tilting your face off a little bit later about it. But if you get too far involved with it, talking 2+ players, it could be a rather big regret. Passing shout to Caleb Banks, priced there at 3.4. Played 23 minutes against Creighton 2 games ago. Very low fantasy point per minute player, though, only 8.5. And then he played just 7 against Marquette. So one of those players where you may be able to squeak out 20 minutes like we did with Burns today, but the production may or may not be there. What do you think about this one?
I'd love to play CJ Gunn as like a bounce back kind of narrative, but with Macklin kind of just becoming more of an alpha like you talked about, I'm not sure that I'd do it. If this was a 2-game slate, I'd probably be more inclined to take a chance like that.
Right.
But with it being such a big slate, I could probably pass. And Jensen, too, he's just been so efficient lately. I just don't feel like paying that price for him, especially in this matchup. I do like the Askew call. He was kind of the person I had circled. I want to see how Villanova does with Matt Hodge now with a confirmed with a torn ACL. Matt Hodge is a local kid. He played high school basketball like 20 minutes from me. So that's sad for him. I feel bad for him. But with him out, I'm wondering if Askew will just be locked in the minutes. I know they're not the same kind of player. They're not the same player archetype, but it's just one less guy in the rotation. And Askew's a chucker, and I love chuckers because, if you're going to take 10, 12 shots, you're probably going to find your way to 20 points more often than not. And at his price, 4.7, he's someone I'm interested in. It probably definitely more than Lindsay. I'd rather take Askew. I think he's out there to shoot the ball more often, and he's had more spike games than Lindsay recently. So I'll be interested to see if he kind of is locked into more minutes now with Hodge out.
Yeah, and there's definitely some pedigree there. Everyone knows Askew. I mean, Kentucky, Texas, Cal, was at Long Beach State last year. This is actually year 6 for him of college basketball. But he's actually shooting a career best from long range. He's been a career like 29, 30% shooter from beyond the arc. He's shooting 42%, which is top 90 in the country. But in conference play here, Big East play, he's shooting 43%, which is 4th best mark in the country for all attempts 75 or higher. So he's making, not only is he getting the volume, which we're pretty used to seeing from him, but he's also been quite efficient with it. He has the 9th highest steal rate in the Big East, the 22nd best assist rate, 14th best shot rate, and 19th best usage rate across the Big East, with anyone playing 20 or more minutes as well. So yeah, the more I talk about it, the more I feel like, Dan, this could be the Jaden Jones play. Like I said, I got a little bit lucky with that one today because I kind of fell into the senior day narrative and he didn't start, and I was just pissed about Allen. So I was like, fuck it, I'm going to keep him in there because, I need the help. And I kind of feel like Askew sets up that way. He's going to take those 10 plus shots. And yeah, I kind of spaced on Hodge there. I knew he was hurt, but it's a tough scene for him as a freshman gunner as well. That's a lot of shots that Hodge is giving up and going into the pool there with his injury. So I feel Askew has no problem in year 6 taking those shots, and it kind of seems like the Villanova coaching staff there at Kevin Willard is more than willing to let him do that. So yeah, we may be rostering Devin Askew heavily tomorrow. We'll see. All right, moving on to this next game here, Maryland versus Wisconsin. Total of 153.5. The Badgers are 13.5 point favorites. This is a team that you like quite well. And Maryland, I feel like you have a pretty decent read on Maryland on that Sunday slate as well, which was just a heinous slate. David Diggy Coit there with the weird rotation there with the minutes. Darius Adams, a terrible game. And Andre Mills broke the slate. Now he's 7.7K. No, thank you. What do you think about this one? Break it down.
Maryland's a team I just might have to start avoiding them. I mean, they're not a good team, first of all. Diggy Coit and Darius Adams both played locally here in the summer. I got to see them play. Actually, Coit played, when I saw him play in the summer, it was, I believe, 2 years ago. And I was like, who is this guy? I think he was from Northern Illinois, just playing in a local summer league, scored like 40 points. He's a real small guy. I was thinking, wow, this guy's pretty good or whatever. And fast forward a couple months later, I see him in the starting 5 for Kansas. It's like, what the hell is this? That was when he played Kansas. He was, transferred. He started, I think, the first game or two and then just kind of disappeared onto the bench. But when he's landed with Maryland, you see those games where he is just a microwave scorer. The problem is he's not getting on the floor right now. I don't think they could trust him anymore. His price is so attractive if you know he's going to play, but he's not starting. And when he's out there, he's getting yanked a lot. So I don't know if I could trust that. Same thing with Adams. I mean, Adams was somebody we were really interested in when he was in the 5K or below range, when he was actually starting and playing solid minutes. But it's just really hard to trust this team right now. I'm not going to pony up for Mills and the punt option, Del Pino. Again, who knows if he's going to get as many minutes and actually pay off. So Maryland's more of just like a complete fade for me. I'll let others try to mess around with that. I'm more interested a little bit in the Badgers side of things, I like if you want to pay up for somebody but not go up to 10K, I am somewhat interested in Nick Boyd. He's kind of becoming a little bit more of the alpha of that team. It used to be like a three-prong attack between Boyd, Blackwell, and then Winter. But Boyd has kind of emerged a little bit. He had a near triple-double a couple weeks ago. So 8-9 against a Maryland team that can't really stop anybody. I'm at least interested there. Blackwell's kind of, he's more of a floor guy. Like, I don't have a problem playing Blackwell. It's just I never really kind of get to him at his price. And then same thing with Winter at 7-8. Not bad. Not somebody I'm force feeding into my lineup. So it's probably Boyd. And Braden Carrington's up to 6-1 now because every 2 weeks or so he puts up 40 points and then does nothing for 2 weeks and then scores 40 points and does nothing for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think that was a career high. He dropped the hammer on my Huskies, 32 points in like a million minutes. I don't know. That was crazy.
He's not a bad player. I actually like him a lot. It's just he just has these spike games. So like it's such a once in a blue moon type thing, but when he does, he goes for 40. So of course now his price is up to 6-1. He's not going to do that again. So it's kind of like Boyd or bust for me. I do like stacking Wisconsin. Sometimes it's very hard to stack them because you can't fit all three guys in. They're just too expensive. So it's probably Boyd. I don't really want to mess with Rhodey or Rapp or Bielauskis. Not really interested there. So I'm somewhat full fading Maryland unless maybe Diggy Coit's in the starting lineup. I might bite there, but probably just Boyd if I want to pay up.
Yeah, that's where I'm at on Maryland. Like if people beat me with Maryland on 11 game slate, then whatever. On a 3-4 game slate, it's a little different because you kind of have to jockey there and eat some of that chalk. But on 11 game slate, I'm just not willing to roster anyone from a team like that with such erratic minutes and the 1 to 2 players that you can really count on there, their prices are just way out of whack. But yeah, when the slate first dropped and I saw Carrington's price, because I was curious after watching what he did to my Huskies, it's like, well, what'd they price this guy at? And I saw 6-1. I was like, I knew they should, like, obviously they should price him up from 5K, but good Lord, 6-1. Like I hope people chase it. I don't think we'll be lucky enough for that, but we'll see. And then, yeah, for Rapp and Rode priced at 4.7, 4.8. I mean, there's a more appealing look for Askew, who we really broke down in the last game. So I like the Boyd call. I've been on some Boyd like points props for a while at 15, 16, and 17.5. Just been hitting the over. So anytime they prop him under 18, it's just an automatic over for me. All right, we'll move on to Purdue versus Northwestern, total of 147.5. And Purdue is 11.5 point favorite on the road. Nope, I don't think so. I'll be betting Northwestern on this one. I don't think I get much argument from you. Purdue is just completely falling apart. I knew this was going to happen. They're 22-7, so don't get me wrong. They're still good. Second in offensive efficiency, like safely in, high seed. But, geez, if they get another, upstart, low major team that can shoot the rock, what are they going to do? Rely on Fletcher Lawyer to hand them 35 real? I don't know, man. They have looked awful. Braden Smith does not look like any kind of Naismith winner. Purdue does not look like a top, 4 seed to me, top 16 seed, I should say. Absolutely outplayed on the road against Ohio State. The close home loss to Michigan State. Whatever. But they've had some really ugly performances. I thought they might deliver a blow to Michigan at home, but they weren't competitive there either. UCLA beat them, Illinois, Indiana, of all people. I just don't know about this Purdue team. I love TKR always. Trey Kaufman-Renn, he's my guy. But I just don't know about rostering Purdue right now. And looking at that line, I can't believe it. Not that Northwestern's been anything special, but I think it might be senior night for them. And Purdue just doesn't scare me. Oscar Clough, it took long enough, but the model's finally starting to revolt against him. He just doesn't project as well anymore. He's still been relatively chalky every slate because I think people are having a hard time grasping because he was so good in the Summit last year. And the non-con portion of the schedule this year, he was such a viable fantasy asset. But he's really struggling here in the dog days of the season winding down and banging with the bigs of Michigan State. Ohio State has some big bodies. Michigan, of course, like he's not built for that, and he's not playing well, and his minutes have diminished because of it. So we've gotten away with just not rostering him. I don't know if the industry is going to kind of stop. The Northwestern matchup on paper is good, so I have a feeling he probably will still see somewhere between 20 and 25% ownership, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Lawyer at 5.7, same thing. No, thank you. I do really like TKR, but we were getting to roster him at like 6.5, 7K for, I don't know, an entire month of January. So now that his price has gone back up to where it probably should be, not as interested there. He's typically going to be in that 30-35 range. Kind of reminds me of a Rashawn Agee. You've got a solid floor there for him, but can't really get the upside out of him these days. And Braden Smith, I just, even dating back to last year when he was breaking the slate, I just made that decision real early in the year last year that I wasn't going to roster him as high price chalk. And it didn't hurt me really. I think twice out of 20 fades. And this year it definitely hasn't hurt me at all. And his ownership has continued to dwindle because of it. So there's going to be a spot where he does break it. And maybe it could be here against Northwestern. But, man, there's no trust here for me with this Purdue team whatsoever. And then on the other side for Northwestern, the minutes are kind of all over the place, especially in the front court. Arenton Page has reclaimed his starting spot and did play 30 minutes against Oregon and put up a very strong game. We know if he gets minutes, he will pay off. He's only priced at 5.1. I know you've probably got some interest there. Trey Singleton at 4.9. He's still maintaining his starting spot, but the presence of Page in minutes has cut into his production. Guys like Jaden Reed have been solid, and then you've got these kind of one-off starters throughout the season. We've seen Max Green have some good games. We've seen Angel Saravino, Jake West. Like, they're all cheap, but man, it's really hard to peg on a game-to-game basis. If you want a Northwestern guy, I think it probably would just be Page at 5.1, especially if he stays in the starting lineup, which I think he probably will here against the Purdue front court. What's your read on this one?
Yeah, Page is my guy. The problem is he just never plays. But it seems like he's starting to play now. So I'm certainly interested. I want to see if he'll start at 5.1 if he plays a lot of minutes. I mean, he's going to be in my core. And there's no way I'm not going to play him. I think he broke down Purdue pretty well. I think Purdue is pretty much just a two-man show. It's like it's Braden Smith, TKR, and then the Purdue intramurals basketball team that they just roll out there. There's really not much left. Oscar Clough, like we talked about him, we kind of made fun of him the last couple slates. I won't be rostering him. I think on the Northwest side, other than Page, I have a little bit of interest in a Jake West just because the minutes have been trending up. He's played basically mid-30s minutes for like 6 in a row. And he's not really a high fantasy point per minute guy, but I've actually liked what I've seen from him in the limited time that I've seen him play. I think there was an Iowa game a couple Sundays ago. He's pretty assertive. And if he's going to be out there for 35 minutes at 4.3, we haven't really talked about that many value options so far. We've pretty much just landed on pretty much Toombs, I think, for SMU, basically at the same price. But if you're going to get Jake West 35 minutes, he's at least a value option I'm interested in. But Page is probably my number one, is assuming that he's going to play the minutes. If he's going to start and probably play the minutes he's been playing, he's probably going to be in my core. Smith and TKR are just a little too expensive for me. So I'm more interested on the Northwestern side. I think Page and West is at least somebody to watch.
Yeah, and I don't mind the West call at all. These kind of one that I alluded to. The minutes have been there. Like, we've seen these Northwestern values kind of take turns. Like, there was a 2 or 3 game stretch where Max Green was actually nuking out as well. And then his minutes just evaporated. But I think West is pretty safe at this point. Jordan Clayton's minutes are all but gone. It seems they're trending in the wrong direction. Justin Mullins, who early in the season had some pretty big minute games, now he's barely playing. Like, it does seem like West is at least playable. I think he might be more of a GPP look because I just am a little bit worried about the production angle there and somebody else like a Saravino getting hot. But yeah, I'm on this Page play. My worry here is that getting on it and then he gets, into some foul trouble or something against his Purdue front court, but at least they're at home. He has been, he started this last game, played 30, came off the bench against Indiana, played 28. He's actually played 21 plus minutes in 4 of his last 5. And I mean, he's got the rates to support it as a play. So I'm definitely on board there. And I knew you'd be on that one, and I definitely agree. All right, Florida State versus Pittsburgh, total of 144.5. Florida State is a 1.5 point favorite. Now, the model always loves Rob McCray. Let's see. Let me look at the initial run here, and this is very early without any adjustments.
This time I'm thinking it won't.
What's that?
This time I'm thinking it won't like him.
Yeah, probably won't because of this slow matchup. Yeah, unadjusted, he's about 3.7, 3.8. And he's priced at 8.3. Lajay Jones, same thing at 6.4. Those have been some of the more projection loving guys, and they've been getting minutes. But I like the Pittsburgh side of here. I probably, Pittsburgh plus 1.5 money line at home. I just learned not to bet Pittsburgh because they do break your heart. But man, this is another one of those teams that I've had some success with. Now they have hurt us. Don't get me wrong, they have hurt us. But Cam Corhen, I have had the benefit of getting him on his big games, and I've also been hitting his point prop, which Underdog's been making it 12.5 for like a month straight, and he's just continually just blasting that. 23, 13, 22, and 16 real over the last 4 games. 31 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 as well. Now this production has caused his price to go from 5.4 now to 7.1, but I still think he's very much in play here against this FSU team, and I don't expect people to really be on him. But, he's playing 35 to 36 minutes. Pittsburgh, another one of these teams, they don't have much of a bench. They've got injuries. Deshaun Jackson was never healthy after transferring in, unfortunately. Brendan Cummings, young scoring machine guard. He's been out since like the Reagan administration. Their lone like backup center, Papa Conte, he's been out for like a month and a half. They just don't have any depth, so they have to play these guys in a ton of minutes. So I love Cam Corhen. I think the FSU front court, the gone are the days of Leonard Hamilton front court in this program. He should do really well here and playing a lot of minutes, and he's priced at a level where he kind of gets into that posh Josh, vibes, because people aren't going to roster him at that price, and they're just going to go straight up to the 8-9K guys or look for someone cheaper. So that's number one. Roman Salupe at 6.1. If anyone from Pitt is going to be popular, it'll likely be him. We've been seeing some pretty heavy chalk on him throughout. And he's been priced at the 6K range for like the last month and a half. So nothing changes there. He has had 2 straight down games, so his price I would have thought would go down slightly. I'm actually kind of glad it didn't, because then I'd be inclined to have to roster him with everyone else at 5.4. At 6.1, he's very much playable, plays a ton of minutes as well. You do have Barry Dunning there with the guard forward eligibility. Now, Salupa's 2 down games coincides with Dunning's 2 big games. He scored 30 and 34 fantasy points in each of his last 2. Again, comes with guard forward eligibility, priced at 6.7. He's just going to play a ton of minutes. Probably like an alt team, like maybe mini stack of Pitt, I think could actually be viable here. And then options like DeMarco Minor, who continue to be cheap. Just his role on this team is so different from when he was at Oregon State. Even though they're short in the rotation, he just doesn't get shots. Like they've pigeonholed him into this, guard the other team's best ball handler and facilitate. And he's definitely been okay at that, but it doesn't lead to a lot of fantasy points, even as a primary facilitator. Omari Witherspoon, younger player at 5.4. I think he's solid, 20 plus in 3 straight. And then you've got the value piece at 4.5 there, Noshus Indrisitis. The Iowa State transfer. I've had a couple of slates this year where I was all over him and damn near had him as a core. Haven't really been using him lately, but got to look at this: 26, 28, 28, and 29 minutes over his last 4. In fact, if we go to the month of February, there was only 1 game in February where he didn't play 26 plus minutes. So minutes secured there, priced at a cheap 4.5. We know we like Askew and a couple other values that we've talked about. But Indrisitis, in this FSU spot, very easily could put up a 5X plus number. He did score 23 against Cal here recently, 30 against Notre Dame. Now he gets another pretty soft, overall program in FSU, fantasy friendly at least. I think he's very playable there at 4.5. So I just asking for trouble with the Pitt stack, but I think it's actually really good here against this FSU team. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not against the Pitt stack. In fact, the Pitt stack won me the $33 competition a couple Saturdays ago. I think I had Corinth, Cialipa, and Andrositis. So it's certainly viable. They're kind of like a version of Minnesota to some extent, where they don't really play anybody other than 5 or 6 guys. They're not as good as the Minnesota players, but they're cheaper. It was possible that you could get away with using some of them. Corn, like you said, his price is up a little bit. So I might throw in maybe a Cialipa, maybe a Witherspoon with an hydrositis, but it kind of strikes me as more of a, if I don't play any of these guys in Maine, I'll probably stack them on the night slate, assuming they'll be on the night slate. I know today they left one of the 9 o'clock games off the slate. But Pittsburgh's at least viable. Once again, I like teams that don't really play anybody. They have a really tight rotation, so I don't have anybody off the bench. So it's viable. And then on the other side with Florida State, I think you kind of mentioned it. We already confirmed that McCray, even the model doesn't like him. So if the model doesn't really like him, I'm not going there. Pitt likes to muck games up. I also, Somerville and Basong were like popular values the other day on a night slate against Miami, but this is not the matchup that I'd want to roster them, and they're more expensive than they were. And I don't even think they hit value in that game against Miami anyway. So I'm probably not going to mess around with those guys. So probably a Pitt stack, not for the faint of heart, but I don't know if I'll do it on Maine. It'd probably be more of a night slate thing where I might get some exposure to Pittsburgh.
Yeah, for sure. Just looking at some of the scores here from tonight, UNLV beat Utah State by nearly 30. Howie Fleming with a triple-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists. Damn, was that the other night, Howie? Good Lord, what a game. Yeah, I think that I'm in a pretty much in a line. Don't think I know I'm in alignment with you there. I don't find myself using the Florida State guys very often. I have landed on Thomas Basong a few times. He just put up a 33 against Georgia Tech last game. He's was a 14-12. He has a ton of upside as far as development goes. But there's so many players at his position that he gets cannibalized a little bit. Did play 27 minutes in that at 4.8. Definitely don't want to chase that, but he is the player that I think is kind of the most talented of this group, at least for a future considerations. But yeah, I'm curious to see if we see any ownership on Somerville, perhaps like an Alex Steen, guys like that. But yeah, I'm all over Corhan again here, and possibly Indrositis as a main team look. All right, Stanford versus Notre Dame, total of 145.5. Notre Dame is a 1.5 point favorite. Kind of tempted to bet Stanford here. I don't know. We'll see. Starting with the Stanford side, we got your guy, Benny Geeler. He's 7.1K. This is the most expensive Benny Geeler has ever been in his life. And he's been around the CBB DFS game for a couple of years now. A 51.5 against SMU just shows you that SMU defense and why I like Miami. That was a 95-75 win for Stanford, by the way. Benny Geeler hit 7 threes. I don't think you played that slate because you were at the Carolina game, but Benny Geeler at 7-1. Now you made the comment today. Who was it? Elias Comardine for Ole Miss, that had he been 13K today, you would have just paid it. I know you said that in jest. He had a pretty big game. I don't think he would have paid off even 10K, but it was a nice game. Do you feel that way about Benny Geeler at 7-1 off of 50?
No. Yeah, not even in consideration. In fact, Geeler pretty much got the Billy Richmond treatment in terms of the pricing, just with only one good game. Yeah. Billy Richmond, I'm not paying 8-1 for Billy Richmond. I'm saying that right now, but at least he was just putting up massive game after massive game after massive. Geeler, it's like he was just nothing. One big game, 7-1. So I'm just not going to do it, especially when there's better options like your guy came in at 5-5. I don't know if I'll get there either. I haven't played him one time. I didn't even know who he was, and then all of a sudden he shot 45 free throws that one night, and everybody in the rostered him. I didn't even know who he was. I'm not sure if I'm going to pay that price, but I mean, he's been playing a lot of minutes lately. 5-5. I mean, I don't see why he wouldn't at least be part of the player pool. So, and then of course you got Okori up there at 9-3, who's obviously their best player, has some spike games. So Geeler's kind of in between their clear-cut best player and another good player who's much more of a value. So there's just no way I'm going to play Geeler when he's more expensive and clearly not as talented as Okori. So that's pretty much the Stanford side. The rest of the guys, like Argowal, I've played many times in the past, but it's just can't predict his minutes nowadays. So I'm probably going to avoid that. And then I'll probably let you start off with the Notre Dame side, but I know they got Harrelson back, so that probably throws a little bit of a wrench in it for some of the other guys. But yeah, for Stanford, no to Geeler, maybe to Kamen, and maybe to Okori.
Yeah, Cayman just benefits from, Akpara going down with the injury. They have the international kid Oscar Gelte, who had some pretty big games in the non-con, but he just was not ready for high conference play, big conference play, and his minutes have diminished. So they needed somebody in the front court to give them quality minutes, and yeah, Cayman kind of emerged. It was the game against Clemson actually in early February. He had like a 40 just out of nowhere. He popped a 40 in 32 minutes against them, and hit it like a bunch of threes and was rebounding really well, and just like completely out of nowhere, 4 or 5 stocks. And he's just cemented himself as the starting, center at this point, and playing big minutes. So definitely playable against Notre Dame. Notre Dame's front court's not going to scare anyone. There is some foul risk there with him, of course, but we have also seen this current coaching staff for Stanford play guys with 2 fouls. Okore, I'm actually extremely interested in him. I don't think, the freshman class will be, it's been talked about a lot, and we'll be talking about a lot more in the future. This might be one of the best freshman classes in the draft. Maybe not of all time, but pretty damn close. Okore, in a normal quote unquote draft would probably be like a top 5 pick. And that's not going to happen for him because of all the talent. There's a chance he comes back. I've heard that with the NIL and everything, that he comes back and play. Now, it might not be for Stanford, but we might get another year of Okore, and I hope we do, because he's going to absolutely tear it up next year if he does. Yeah, on the Notre Dame side, Harrelson's back. Cole Serta put up a 40 banger last game, which is against NC State. The ailing NC State, suddenly they're reeling totally. 41 minutes of play as an overtime game. He had 32 real. Serta doesn't give you any peripherals, but he can get hot. He gets 6 triples in that one. A couple of weeks before that against Georgia Tech, he had 7 triples. Game against Louisville, he had 5 on 14 attempts. Like, he just jacks. Even with Harrelson back that last game, he continues to jack, but it's 6'9". It'd be silly. Like, you could actually make a GP lineup, which is like the most overpriced players that, on the slate, and you could just roll that stack of Gieler and Serta. And I think, obviously that's going to fail probably 70 to 80% of the time, but that 10% it doesn't. Like, both those guys get into a shoot off. Like, would it really shock you if suddenly, like, oh, Gieler's hit 7 threes, oh, Serta's hit 9, like record breaking stuff? I don't know if it would shock me. So that stack actually is kind of interesting just from that standpoint. Yeah, with Harrelson out so long, it's caused his price to go up. Shrewsbury's price is up there at 6'2". He was actually adding peripherals for the first time in his life without Harrelson, but his price is going to have to come down. The model loved Carson Tout for a while, but he's kind of normalized at this point. I always like my man Sir Mohammed, but he's got to go to the major level. He's got to hit the portal and probably go play for Queens or something. He got those extra minutes with Harrelson out, didn't do much with them. Yeah, it's an ugly game. I think Stanford is the right side, honestly, to dig into it more. Plus 1.5 money line, whatever. But I think this game will probably come away with very minuscule ownership. Cayman, I think, at 5.5 is probably main team viable, but that's about it. All right, Baylor versus Houston, total of 141.5. Houston is a 15.5 point favorite. I don't know. All of a sudden, Baylor's starting to look like, a competent team like we're used to seeing under Scott Drew. They've, the pretty solid win on the road against UCF. They pushed Arizona on Arizona's floor. Like, suddenly this Baylor team doesn't look so bad. Houston, they've dropped 3 of their last 4. They did blow the doors off of Colorado. Probably the easiest bet of the season was Houston coming off a 3-game losing streak, which is only the second time in Coach Sampson's life that's happened. And at Colorado going to Houston's floor, like, that was the easiest 18.5 spot effort. They ended up winning by 40. They should beat the doors off of this Baylor team as well. I think senior night was on Saturday against Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure that's the case. So no kind of weird things here, but betting wise, yeah, I think Houston, I don't like laying those big spreads, but I do think they probably spank Baylor here. But where's your head at for DFS purposes? Because targeting against Houston, typically not something we want to do on a full slate. Baylor has some dudes, but they're all priced up at this point for this matchup. And then Houston, we had some consistency for a time there. Kingston Flemings was an auto lock. Chris Sinak was an auto lock. But suddenly it's getting hard to peg these Houston guys again. They're just not giving us consistent fantasy production at this point in the season. What are you doing here?
Yeah, the one thing I like about Houston is their prices almost never change. I know Milos Uzan went up a little bit because he just had a big game. But Kingston Flemings has just kind of been hovering around like the 8.6, 8.7, 8.8 range. He just isn't hitting his ceiling like he was earlier this or February and part of January as well. Manny Sharp at 6.5. I mean, we know he's very reliant on his scoring. Could he score 27 points and hit a bunch of threes? Sure. I'm not necessarily against it. And then Knack is very, hot and cold. If he's going to hit some of the pick and pop threes, he could really pay off. Tugler, if he's stays out of foul trouble, of course, he's going to do well at 5K, but is he going to stay out of foul trouble? Probably not. None of the value guys are ever really viable. Although I will say Mercy Miller has kind of had 2 good games in a row. I know one of them was a blowout, so it's hard to I didn't watch the game, so I don't know if he was like a factor before they blew Colorado out of the water or not, because he was a little bit of a legitimate factor in the game before against Kansas. So maybe I'm probably not going to do it. It's just not worth the risk. It just feels like a rug pull. So Houston's kind of like one of those, like, yeah, maybe last man in, Manny Sharp type deal. Maybe Kingston Flemings if I want somebody on the slate. But other than that, Houston's just kind of status quo with their prices and my interest level. Baylor, you said, on the road against Houston, it's not really something that I want to target. I'm not going to pay up 9K for Cameron Carr. Yesufu's kind of been going through a little bit of a cold stretch right now. He's at 8K. The only guy I'm a little bit interested is Isaac Williams, just because he's 5'6". So it's a palatable price you could pay, even though it's a horrific matchup. But he's playing a lot of minutes. He's racking up a lot of assists. He's been pretty consistent lately. It's just he probably hasn't had the type of matchup that he's going to see against Houston, but at least somebody to consider, just because if you 5'6" for him and he puts up 18 or 20 points, it doesn't end your night. It's not going to help you, but at least somebody to consider.
Yeah, definitely. That Houston, what was it? The Kansas, that was a short slate on the 23rd against Kansas, I'm pretty sure, right? And we were playing around with some Harwell and some other stuff, and yeah, Miller ended up having a pretty strong game against Kansas, 17 fantasy points in 18 minutes, and gets rewarded in the Colorado blowout with 24. And yeah, lo and behold, he can play. Should be at New Orleans with the No Limit Soldiers with his dad as the GM, in my opinion. But yeah, this Houston team, they've got some values if you can stomach it. Guys like Khalifa Satko, Jojo Tugler remains cheap, but yeah, this is one of the not even a hammer game, it's a later night game that I don't have that much interest in, and honestly, and I'd be curious to see where the rest of the industry is with this Houston team at this point. All right, the last game on the slate here, USC versus Washington. Total of 150.5. My Huskies are 6.5 point favorites. Both teams just dealing with injuries galore. Came out after the last game, and geez, DK acted quickly because they took him out of the pool completely. But Chad Baker-Mazara had a real strong first half in their last game, and then inexplicably there wasn't much talk about an injury, and he didn't play in the second half. And this was the Nebraska game on Saturday, and suddenly then it comes out that, oh yeah, there was a disagreement with the coaching staff and something else, and then rumors about some other out there stuff that won't talk about on air, and suddenly he's off the program. So I don't know what the deal is. He's gone. He's out of the player pool. That's, he's been injured and like for a pretty long stretch there. What was it, about almost 2 weeks? Now I'm starting to question if there was an injury at all. But that, having him out, that's 30 minutes to go around in the pool, like 15 shots. It's a lot to the rest of the guys. And when Baker was out, we can go into the Penn State game. We saw Cam Woods, play 36 minutes, had a really big game, 13, 5, and 9, 4 steals, like at Robert Morris last year and NC State prior to that. He's been at a different school every year, by the way. But we knew from last year at Robert Morris how good Cam Woods could be. Didn't get a chance to show that with USC until pretty much the last month or two of the season. And then Elijah Arenas, of course, now that he's fully healthy, playing a ton of minutes. He came off the bench last game, played only 23 minutes with Baker back. I would expect him to go back into the starting lineup. He has the 5th highest shot rate in the conference and the 2nd best usage rate in the conference. So 35 plus minutes for Arenas. His price has dropped a little bit down to 6K after it touched 8K there with some big games. got to be interested in him there, assuming, like I said, he does go back into the starting lineup. Woods is a little bit more expensive at 6'9", although his price has dropped because he nearly touched 8K as well. But he's definitely playable. I think he's going to end up playing like 40 minutes in this game the entire way. So you have to consider him for that regard as well. Without Chad Baker, that does give merit to maybe a guy like Jordan Marsh, who we saw play some elevated minutes without Baker around. Gabe Dines has played a little bit more. We've seen Jaden Brownell. It's really hard. Like Brownell against the Nebraska blowout game, he played 30 minutes and put up 24 fantasy points. Now he's 4-1. Like I could see people chasing that, but you got to be smart because, you could go and play 3 minutes the very next game. I typically will not mess with non-USC starters because it's just not smart. You can get some value, though, if you're right, or if you're making multiple lineups. At this point, I would just stick with Arenas or Woods personally. Ezra Azar at 6'8" is somewhat interesting, although I think there's probably fouls in his future here on the road, and same thing with Jacob Kofi. Now, Kofi is from the Washington area, Pacific Northwest, so this game may mean a little bit more to him. I'm sure I'll have some family there, so there's kind of an angle with that, but overall, I think Woods and Arenas are the right place here. Now, on the UW side, Frank Kepnong, man, every single year he's been hurt, which is damn shame. Dealing with a leg issue. Love Kepnong. He's so physical. I'd love to use him actually if he does play and start at 4-6. I think he'll be an absolute menace to USC. But I'm just having a really hard time, trusting him when he does have these injuries. Bryson Tucker also popped up on the injury report. Didn't take the court at all against Wisconsin. They're calling it a personal matter. Now, he missed some time before. He's actually a very athletic transfer from Indiana, and we do need him quite a bit. I say we because as a Husky super fan. They do really need him out there. So hopefully he can come back. And if he does enter the starting lineup again like he was at 3-6, I do think he's worth looking at. USC is bleeding fantasy points to all positions, and anybody playing 20-plus minutes for the Huskies in this game has to be at least under consideration. Lathan Somerville, same thing at 3-8. He put up 11 last game. He's not had very appealing logs, but the minutes have been at 22 and 25 the last 2 games, and he's under 4K. Might be like that Trent Burns play, for Missouri, whose minutes continue to go up. He played another 19 today, just didn't do anything because Missouri was awful. I think that could be something we get from Somerville, but maybe against USC does a little bit better. Just mainly provides you with that salary savings. At the guard spot, we've seen a shift in the starting lineup. Kamari Peterson has started, come off the bench kind of every other. We did see Cortland Muldrew, who was deep out of the rotation at the beginning of the season, then come in and get a spot start and play 20-plus minutes. He's played 19-plus in 3 of his last 4. He's kind of interesting. If he was like 3-3, I think I'd actually be banging the drum on him. 4-1 is a little bit tougher just because I don't think there's enough shots for him. And then you get into this next tier, guys like Wesley Yates. This is a revenge narrative. He went to Washington, then the USC where he became a gunner. Then he comes back to Washington. So there's a little bit more pep in his step for this one, I'd say. They did play USC back in early December. He put up 23.5 in that game in 37 minutes, basically all from his 3-point shooting. He made 4 in that game. That's the only bad part about Wesley Yates. He just doesn't get a ton of other stats, but at 5'4", there is GPP upside because if he puts up 20 real, he's definitely going to pay that price off. Zoom Diallo, 30-plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 4, and he's doing it quietly because nobody really pays attention to this Husky team, except their fans like me. They're awful again this year. And Zoom's price has actually gone down. Not sure why. Coming off a near 40 against Northwestern, big win, 76-62 in that game. 22-6-6. Before that, 12-7-10, 18-5-6, 16-4-7, 24-3-7. Like he's flirted with a triple double. Almost feel like he's going to come with it with a triple double here before the season's out, running out of chances. But I do like Zoom Diallo quite a bit. He's in that weird price range again, that 7K to 8K range. We just have years of data. People ignore that spot. They're either paying up or they're paying down, and that's just kind of where I live with the low-owned play. So I do like Diallo as a main team late night hammer. Maybe on the night slate there we can get to him more easily, but I do think he's in a great spot here against USC. And then, of course, Hannes Steinbach, who probably a one-and-done prospect, although he'd get a shit ton of money if he came back. 11-1. It's going to be tough to get there with him. The USC game, he had 52. So you want to at least consider it because he had 24 and 16 against them. And this, again, was in early December. USC has no answer for him and his offensive ability. Coming off a double-double, 22 and 11 against Northwestern, against Rutgers, 24 and 16, 26 and 9 against Minnesota. I mean, he's putting up 40, 45, 48, 50 fantasy points with actually minimal effort. He has a lot of skill. I love his post moves, and I wouldn't be so quick to write him off at 11-1 just yet. It's a very tough price to get to, but I think we might have enough value to make it work if we want to. How are you treating the hammer game here?
Well, I'm going to trust your read on the Huskies. I always do. I actually haven't seen them play as much as I would have liked this year. So whenever they're on a slate, I pretty much just listen to you, and whoever's projecting well on the sheet and whoever you're pumping up, I'll probably follow that. Wesley Yates was the guy that I was the most interested in just because the price point, the revenge narrative, and what he can do. On the USC side, you pretty much laid it out already. Like Arenas is probably going to be in there as long as he's starting. Cam Woods is probably going to play almost 40 minutes. The two forwards are certainly going to be viable. It will be interesting to see. I don't think they'll start him, but a couple weeks ago they started Gabe Dines against Penn State. He's like a 7'3" guy, and he actually had a pretty good game. And he's 3K. So if he was in the starting lineup, I think we've seen enough from his spot start in that Penn State where we could throw him out there because he's huge. He can get blocks. He can get rebounds. They threw a couple lobs to him. So I'm not going to play him if he's not starting because he could literally play 0 minutes. But if he's in the starting lineup, 3K, that's something I'd be at least considering. But it's probably going to be Arenas. He's going to take a million shots. Woods is going to play the whole game. So some combination of USC as a hammer is probably what I'm going to be looking at, especially for the night slate, but possibly even for Maine as well.
Yeah, there were a couple games in early January. I can't remember if it was Azor or Kofi, but I believe one of them missed a game or two, and he got some spot starts, one of which was against Minnesota. He played 37 minutes in that game. I do remember that one. He put up a pretty solid 22, 23 fantasy point game. So he's definitely capable. And they definitely need him against Steinbach too. And if Kepnock were to play, like they'll need that size. So I don't mind that. Like you said, it's just so risky playing non-starters for USC because you could literally get no minutes. You had a pretty nice read on Jordan Marsh a couple of weeks ago for that. I think it was that same Penn State game maybe, or where he played 22 minutes, but it goes from playing 22 to 4. So it's just so hard to trust Musselman and this USC team. But yeah, I think the hammer game, there's a real edge because people write off the Husky games anyways. Nobody's going to want to stay till the very end, and they'll probably set it and forget it when they go into those late night games. If anyone's out or the surprise starter, like there's just going to be such a big news edge for us. So definitely looking forward to this one. And I did like this slate today a lot better than what we're going into tomorrow. Of course, bricked it because we got cute, but I feel like our read on this one is pretty good as well. And I think a solid approach here. Just got to trust ourselves and not tinker too much prior to lock. All right. So that's the slate. We'll do a quick best bets and then we'll get out of here because I know we're coming up on 2 hours. So my number one bet yesterday was New Hampshire -1.5, -2, just because they lost 8 in a row and the America East. I say it almost in jest that it's a rigged conference, but there has been so many weird games that make no sense, and that was one of them. And I'm happy to report we were on the right side of the rigging. New Hampshire was down by 15 at one point in the first half, and at one point 18. Game went to multiple overtimes because they had to get the New Hampshire win. They push it into overtime, push it in another one, and New Hampshire ends up winning by like 8. Hilarious. I knew that line smelled real bad, and we were able to go to the window on it. You were all over Monmouth, -4.5. There was for Northeastern, Kermery, one of their best players. He's been in and out of the lineup for like the last 6 weeks. He ended up sitting out. That was a big help. It got a little dicey there early in the first half, and Northeastern was actually ahead for a time. But Monmouth took care of business, 189.83. So both of our best bets yesterday on the show did win. I'm happy to report. Let's fire out a couple here and see if we can keep that going. Miami +1.5 is -105. I'm just going to take them on the money line. Really like this Miami team, plus 110 there on DK against SMU. I think they win. And then also last time I did this, I was on a team prop for Miami. They ended up missing, like they I don't know, the first half. They had a horrible first half. And I like the total in this game, but I like the team total more. Miami team total of 79.5. I'll do some searching around to various books, some of the crypto books too, if you have them. But I like them to be knocking on the door of 100. So over 79.5 team total points, and Miami, Florida money line. Those are my top two. Also like this a lot. The first game, standalone, 9 a.m. PST, noon for those of you on the East Coast. We have day basketball tomorrow, Adam. Jacksonville taking on Bellarmine, first game of the ASUN. You mentioned Bellarmine's offense is fun. They are 1.5 point favorites here against Jacksonville. I kind of like Jacksonville too, but I'm taking Bellarmine here. Day game, first of the day. Bellarmine minus 1.5, Miami plus 1.5 / money line, and over 79.5 team total points. Those are my three top plays here. I'll have a lot more tomorrow, of course, but that is what I'm on here. Anything that you like on the board that you want to give?
It's absolutely wild because one of mine was actually Bellarmine. I know I talked him up a little bit in our conference preview, but I like them on the money line. So the fact that we're both on them, that really makes me feel good about that one. So that's probably my top one. I also like Oakland over Northern Kentucky. I mean, I'm not as confident because anything can happen with these mid-major slates, but I do like Oakland there just to add something since we're both on Bellarmine, because Bellarmine was my number one pick. And then as soon as you brought that game up, day basketball, I was like, oh no, he's going to take Bellarmine. It was literally because it was the first game on the slate. The first thing I saw, I was like, Bellarmine can really score the ball. So we'll both go with that one, obviously. But I also do like Oakland over Northern Kentucky in a Horizon League game.
Love it. Yeah, there's ASUN games like all day tomorrow from the time we wake up, 9, then 11:30, 2 o'clock. Like there's some leads us into the slate. So we'll be streaming some ASUN games throughout the day. Dropped a few props yesterday. Props were actually pretty solid. Shout out Jeremy there who played the Badunga over 9.5 rebounds. Let me pull one or two here, and then we'll head out. I do appreciate you. Let me just pull up the board. Got some really good feedback yesterday on everything that the way we sequenced the show. So just want to give something for everyone. First thing I'm going to do is pull Pitt, Cam Corhen. Again, UD's had him at 12.5 points pretty much like the last 2 weeks. I've just been hammering the over. They moved him to 13.5 now. I still like the over there. I actually have him for around 15, 16. So, any higher than that, if it goes to 14.5 by morning, I'd probably stay off. But over 13.5 points for Cam Corhen, definitely one for me that I'll be all over. And then going to the Stanford Notre Dame game, I want to pull this up because I want to see some of the Geeler. I felt like some of the Geeler and Serta props were going to be extremely high, and I'm right. Cole Serta's 15.5 points. He has gone over that number 4 of his last 5, and then Benny Geeler at 12.5, kind of baiting you into that. But if his shots aren't falling, he's just not going to have it. He's hit 11, 15, 12, and then 30. So a pretty interesting look there. I do like Geeler under 3.5 rebounds. He does a lot of just shooting on the perimeter, not a lot of chances for rebounds. He has been under that number in 3 of his last 4. So I'll take the Geeler under 3.5 points, Cam Corhen over rebounds, and then Cam Corhen over 13.5 points. Those are the top 2 props for now. If you're in the community and the Discord, we'll be popping a lot more in there. So make sure you reach out to myself or the team at FTN or the Green Screens and Window Trips community as well. We'll get you set up there for the March run here. Conference tournament season is underway. And before you know it, we'll be talking about a bracket. Selection Sunday is just a little over a week away. Pretty wild to think about, Adam. Appreciate you on the show as always. Make this a regular occurrence. Does force me to make sure I'm up and providing content for the masses as well. For a while there, I was so deep in betting content, I just didn't have the energy for the shows. But I'm reinvigorated and ready to keep popping these out. I appreciate you very, very much. You did we talked about this a little bit, but you got hacked on Twitter. The reason I bring it up is because I want people to be able to find you why don't you give your new handle now so people can actually follow you that want to and reach out where they communicate with you and all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, that's actually a good question. I'm pretty sure I know what it is because I obviously had to change the handle since I was hacked. So the old one was at Adam15Young. Do not look that one up. In fact, the account's been suspended. They probably picked up on the fact it was hacked. So my new one is at Adam Young 12 25 8. So that's my new one. I only have like 100-something followers, but trying to get back.
Yeah, you'll get it back. We'll get it back. I'll make sure to share that as well. But yeah, you got the old name, handful of numbers, username. I like it. Very good. Thank you, man. Appreciate it as always. I know it's late for you over there, so we'll wrap with you here tomorrow. And appreciate it as always. Best of luck, and anyone that continues to support the show, as always, thank you so much. Make sure on your way out the door that you like, repost, retweet, interact. All of that stuff helps us in the digital currency world that we live in. Take care, guys. See you next time. Let's get those green screens and window trips.